Yes, I'm doing a fireside chat tonight. Everything else has really happened today. So I wanted to introduce you to the wonderful Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, more, which Nancy Pelosi will be introducing next week. It's the pot bill. She tried to do it as a standalone bill, but no one would stand up while writing it. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is LALATE, which we have the s'mores on the barbecue, and it's like campfire chats. But as we sit here this evening, and we wonder how crazy could the Republican and the Democratic leadership become. Now we know that stimulus checks have now become not the focus of the Democratic Party, but a pot bill. But as we sit here tonight, where are the economic data and where is the economics of the situation to get this somewhere grounded back into reality? And what will it take for President Trump to issue an executive order in a universe in which we're now seeing, things like this quote from McClintock told Politico. I find it ironic that the only small business that the Democrats seem worried about are cannabis shops. Boy, we were looking for another round of PPP, but I guess at the moment we're just going to have another round of puff, puff, puff from the Democrats coming up next week. As we sit here tonight, there's really a couple of economic factors that I want you to really focus on that I think might be the telling factors to get President Trump to give an executive order for stimulus checks and for an extension of LWA. Those economic factors are really the markets, liquidity, real estate, and the bond market. And all of those seem very unsettled this afternoon. It's ironic because just as I was recording evening's LA Late, in a day that everything was backed up a little bit, Jim Cramer on CNBC said the markets are giddy, meaning stock markets are giddy, because they really thought stimulus was going to be a priority with these people, and it's not. And I really found that promising news for you tonight, because ultimately what I've always said is that the financial cliff, to go over the financial cliff, sadly, we can't just have one demographic over the financial cliff. More parts of this economy need to be impacted for Republicans to really realize stimulus needs to be done right now. As you sit here tonight, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just like, Vincent Price is about to walk into this broadcast. This is just like, okay. It's like, goodness. As you sit here tonight, there's a couple of economic factors that are really, really keyed up. First, the stock market in the last week was really not happy about what transpired. They can say whatever they want to, but they were unhappy that the stimulus round went as a debacle as it seemed. Everyone didn't think it was going to be great, but no one thought it was going to be just a hot mess express as it was. Second, no one is really more surprised than Wall Street that the Republicans and Democrats just simply refuse to sit down and talk about stimulus, and that the president seems to ignore the fact that the economy is going to pot, while America really just puts Bob Woodward's book on the front page of every news publication. So now the stock market is unsettled. The stock market is down this week. And that is the second force that really is starting to kick in. The first force was unemployment. Unemployment really imploded in March and has never rebounded. And unemployment numbers are no good. They're absolutely no good. Yesterday, on Thursday morning's LA at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I detailed the new jobless claims, and they weren't good. They got worse. Stock market thought they're going to get better. They did not. And so we're at almost 24 consecutive weeks of unemployment claims being bad. The pandemic hit in March, and we're really going nowhere. We are currently in September. We're heading into the winter months. The pandemic is expected to get worse, and unemployment never really improved at all since March. that tells you a couple things. One, it shows that the stimulus round of the spring did not work. It was not enough. Two, it shows that the lifting of lockdown orders did not help enough. Jobs just did not come back. People did not come back. And it shows you as we start a new fall season that we're really almost where we were when this pandemic hit for purposes of jobless claims. So when you look at that, you now have two factors not going well: unemployment, and second, the stock market. The third factor that really kicks things into overdrive, especially for sakes of politicians who generally have real estate holdings, is real estate. Real estate is starting to implode. It's imploding across the board because mortgage forbearance and mortgage foreclosures have really not been protected by anything that the president has done. Apartment owners are not getting rent for their apartments. They're now facing eviction moratoriums. They're not maybe making a rent. They're facing losing their apartment buildings to foreclosures. And a lot of things of the mortgage industry is just literally going very bad. If you were not around during the previous mortgage crises in the United States, it's a bad situation. When we talk about real estate, it is one of those markets that we start with someone like you or me that faces, a horrible ordeal, but everything up the food chain gets very, very worse very quickly. You start with the tenant, then you get to the apartment owner, then you get to the bank that has the mortgage on the apartment owner, then you get to the underwriting bank that underwrites the mortgage for the bank, and everyone slowly dominoes out of spirals and gets very bad very quickly. And what ultimately can happen is you could have imploding of financial markets. As you sit here today, then it wonders to you what could happen worse. Run on liquidity. Run on liquidity. The Financial Reserve has been the hot mess express during this entire thing. They've done nothing. They've absolutely categorically done nothing. And Wall Street is now giddy about it. Not giddy, nervous about it. It does not see security in what the Federal Reserve is doing. Next week, the Federal Reserve is going to have 2 days of chats. And the comments coming out in advance of that say that they're not happy. They're not happy about that as well. Federal Reserve has billions, if not trillions of dollars allocated for stimulus relief, has done nothing, has not sent out a single penny. And so as you sit there, you wonder, okay, well, who is going to do something? You have real estate, you have unemployment, you have labor now threatening to walk off the labor workforce because of hazard pay and bonuses not being paid. You have all these industries really slowly imploding. And I haven't even talked about other industries that a lot of the viewers of this channel really don't care to hear about. Oil and gas and airlines and transportation. All those could slowly melt down. And what happens is you have no stimulus. You have nothing to help anything. And what could happen is things could get very bad very quickly. The point is that at that point, ironically, even the stimulus package proposed by the Democrats, which is overly encompassing and overly broad, would not do enough. It would be almost like a minutia of a plan for the catastrophe economically that could come to this country in the fall if this continues. A new report out from NBC in the last few days talked about COVID-19 being spread in restaurants. It found that people who were in prolonged areas like restaurants and gyms for several half hours or an hour at a long duration were very prone to get COVID-19. There's new concerns that the restaurant industry will just simply collapse as cool weather comes in and people won't be dining outside. So as you see that, the next question and concern is really, well, how bad could certain industries get? And when you have all those industries collapsing at the same time, on top of real estate, on top of a skitty stock market, on top of a bond market, which has really not done well whatsoever, and you have analysts after analysts not really predicting anything good except for certain technology companies that do well off of a pandemic, then what could happen? What could happen was detailed a long time ago, and that has been covered on this channel extensively, but it basically said, if you don't throw enough stimulus onto something before it gets bad, then throwing little drips of stimulus progressively will be of no help. And while Nancy Pelosi today said, well, I don't want to settle for a cheap date, I'd rather settle for what I offered, which is a $1,200 stimulus check for one individual sitting here from March till late September. That's not stimulus. That's barely anything. Imagine April, May, June, July, August, September. You've waited around 6 months for a stimulus check. From a Congress that was promised to give you a stimulus check every month for 6 months until the pandemic improved, you're waiting around for one $1,200 check for 6 months? And that's supposed to be called stimulus. That's not called stimulus. That's called way behind. And it's the same thing with a Democratic Party that thinks that they can't give PPP money or can't give EIDL money or can't give anything to help small businesses like EIDL grants. That doesn't work either. But on the other side, there's the Republicans that have done literally nothing. So if the president waits any longer, things will get so ridiculously bad, potentially, that even a stimulus check coming to you in 2 weeks, which might be a lifesaver for a lot of people, may be almost much of nothing when it comes to stimulus. It is time for the president to move, and it is time for the president to act now. The question is how quickly he'll see it, and whether or not he will confront the reality of where the markets are this evening. Coming up tomorrow morning is a morning to LALATE with better lighting and less ghosts. You know, it's maybe I'll do a horror channel after this. It's just, as always, stay informed, stay smiling. Dracula will be coming for you. I had to put some Temple of Doom flavor into the channel somewhere today. Maybe I'll practice my puppets. As Pelosi introduces her pot bill next week, I'm so excited for Munchie's Mnuchin and Cray Cray Codlow and Puff Puff Pelosi and all those wonderful things that could come along with it. But for now, stay informed, stay smiling, stay focused, and stay in LA for more.